All right. So if I turn it over to you, we're good? Okay. You think? Okay, I can see your faces. So, since I have nothing that I'm going to share today, I want to go ahead and just turn it over to the Power BI panel. So go for it. I'm gonna mute.
Do we want to go in the order that the questions were listed in the Google Doc? Sarah, does that mean that you are starting us off?
Yeah, I think that makes
Okay.
good sense. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
One of the first things we were hoping to talk about and respond to is the difference between Power BI and the desktop, the service, and the mobile. And I'm going to drop a few links into the chat to provide some additional resources on that because um, I think that there's a lot of other like really more complex things that we'd like to talk about today. But really, like the main difference is that mobile, you can only view what has already been created. You can create using the dashboard, the Power BI service, and also that's how you are sharing with other people. But Power BI desktop is where you're going to have the most ability to create your dashboards prior to sharing with others. So I'll go ahead and upload those links, and then I'll let the other two move on with their topics here.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll I guess I'll tackle the next two questions, which are, do I need to be an experienced programmer to dive into Power BI? I don't think that anyone needs to be an experienced programmer to start with Power BI. Those of you who are familiar with other Microsoft products, Excel in particular, so if you can work Excel on a regular basis, chances are you will be able to navigate some of the basic features in Power BI with no issues. If you plan to do some more sophisticated things with this data visualization platform, it would definitely help pick up DAX code skills and maybe Power Query as well. But most tasks can be done in Power BI without having to code at all. In fact, you can just drag and drop, and that would probably be the easiest way once you connect your source file to then continuing with the next steps. The next question I'm tackling is, what do I need to consider when putting data into Power BI? So I guess the list can be very, very long, but my recommendation is to always think about your intended audience. Who is this for, essentially? Is this going to be for your fellow IR, IE assessment, IT professionals? Is this going to be for students? Is this going to be for faculty? Is this going to be for leadership? How technically savvy are they? How much, essentially, how much hand-holding and explanation will they need potentially? So depending on how prepared your audience is to work with Power BI, I guess that's probably the first decision that you need to make. The next one is probably, what are your data sources? Are you just working with an Excel file that's just very large or very small? Or are we talking about some SQL databases, essentially, what's your data source? Depending on the answer to that question, you'll also make some decisions related to kind of how I work next with Power BI. If you connect into, let's say, databases, then you'll probably need to think about, will things refresh automatically? We have many of Power BI dashboards at Florida State University that require no human touch anymore. Everything is refreshed daily, automatically, and we occasionally hear from folks saying, it looks like something broke. So sometimes when Power BI pushes refreshes or updates, some features may require going in and manually fixing something. But if you set this up the right way, you can just leave it alone at that point. I guess the next set of considerations is just about your data. Is it clean? Is it dirty? Is it messy? How much cleanup and transformation do you need to do before your data moves into Power BI? If you're working with Excel, how much can you clean up in Excel? And another interesting consideration is your data set long, or long, I guess, like this, or wide? Power BI very much likes long data sets, which means, let's say, if you are tracking students by enrollment of students by year, your years are not columns. Your year is just one column with every year being a separate row. And for however many students you have, that's how many rows you're going to have. So Power BI does not like wide data sets. It's just essentially everything is long. And I guess last thing is, if you're bringing data from multiple sources, how are they going to be connected? Think kind of, is there going to be like a central student ID that everything is going to be then connected upon? So those are some of the considerations that I think are probably some very early decisions that you need to make before opening that Power BI file. I think that's it for me as far as the pieces that I wanted to cover. Mm-hmm.
Hey everyone, I'm Lee Nickles. I'm at Western Carolina University, and I've got the next section of questions, which is what data sources can be used? A lot is kind of a place to start. I'm going to share my screen. If you haven't seen Power BI Desktop, this is what it looks like, what a blank desktop looks like. A major part of the main ribbon is get data. We've got some of the ones that Power BI thinks that you are going to be interested in. Excel, their One Lake Catalog, SQL Server. You can enter your own data just by typing into a table. I don't recommend that, but it's a thing. And you can look at recent places you went. If you want a little more detail, you can click on Get Data, and you can see we've got Excel and various other things that you can go to, even just kind of a text CSV file. And if you want more detail, if you're not sure your thing is covered in that, you can go further down into the full entire list of sources that it will look into for your data. What kinds you want and all that. I'm going to do a very quick demo of getting a little bit of data connected. So I'm going to connect to an Excel workbook. I've got, let's see here. I've got a folder on my desktop. Sample data. Okay. So this data is supposedly from a rubric that we administered in a class. I found the file, and there's only one tab in it. You can pick from multiple tabs. You can get a little preview of the data, and you can do some transformations on it, or you can load it straight in. So if you have your file, it's ready to go. You can import it, and it will go grab that source from the spreadsheet, and you can have a look at the data in that file. And it's got all the columns, all the data, all the information in there. So, ta-da, done. You can also go to one that I use frequently is an Access database. Some of our data ends up in an Access database in our college. If you go to something like a database, you can pull in one of the tables. I've got like a sample data in here somewhere. Data sample. Okay. So you've got all your tables that are in your database listed, and you pick the one that you want to get. The nice thing about databases is you can also pick queries. So I'm going to also pick a query that I created, and both of those can be pulled in. I'm going to hit load on both of those, and it's evaluating and thinking about it. And it's going to pull those in and add those also as data tables available to me. Another that we've used occasionally is you can connect to SharePoint and a SharePoint list. So if there is a list you've created on a SharePoint site, you can connect directly to that list and pull that data in. So that's useful if there's a data set that several people maybe have to take care of and manage and enter. I won't do that demo, but that again is under here, get data, go to more, and well, that's a SharePoint folder. SharePoint is down here somewhere. I promise. SharePoint list is somewhere in that list. I promise. So done it before. As was touched on a little bit, a key thing to know about pulling in your data is data typing. What type is that data? So for example, in the spreadsheet that I imported, I've got text for names. I've got the student ID is actually a considered a number, et cetera, et cetera. Somewhere out here, I thought there, oh, no, maybe it was somewhere else. There is, you need to go through your the different fields that you've pulled in to make sure, yes, that really is supposed to be a number, that's supposed to be a date, that is supposed to be a number, but maybe we treat it like text instead and we need to change the data type. So typing that data is really important, because if it's not typed to be a number, then you won't be able to do things like find the average, find the max, things of that nature. So does anyone have a question about going out importing data before I turn it over? I haven't looked at the chat here. Let's see.
We have a question about loading data into Power BI. Erica asked, it recognizes my headers until I create the report. When I start building a report, it only recognizes column 1. My headers are treated as data. Do you have any thoughts about that? Or anybody?
Let's see. If it does that, I know that there's a way in the where you can transform your data to say, oh, actually, I want the top row to be considered headers. I would have to
I
dig
can,
to do
yeah,
that.
I do this a lot. So if you are having trouble remembering, I can just guide you through it right now.
Sure. Oh,
Yeah,
guide
if
me.
you wouldn't, I don't have Power BI up, and it always takes me like 5 minutes to get it up.
Great.
Okay, if you were to click, yeah, transform data, yeah, and then you have your data on the, yeah, you're under your data. And so if you were to go to, let me see here, use first row as header. So on the very top under the transformed section, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, also that. It's sometimes some things are in multiple places in here, but all the way to the left, the second option in says use first row as headers.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, and so then that will promote that first row up to headers and remove it from your data set. Or alternatively, there's the next option down where I think it says use headers as first row. So if it incorrectly recognizes headers, sometimes it will recognize this, sometimes it won't. But if it's not recognizing it, you can go in there and say those are headers, not data.
Cool. Power Query is a wonderful, powerful way to manipulate your data, manage your data. not manipulate it, I guess. I would mention that my practice is often to get data into a database of some sort and do a lot of the transformation there that I want before I pull it into Power BI. It seems faster to me, and I'm more familiar with doing that. However, you can certainly become a Power Query expert and do it all in Power BI. Let's see if there were other questions. Thank you, Ryan. Advantage of putting the data in a list. Yeah, there you go. Okay. I think that's all. I'll turn it over to the next person.
I think that's me, and I am going to talk about relationships. And by the way, if any other panelists with me, feel free to chime in because relationships, I'm setting all this up. In my experience, everyone does it differently in a way that works for them. So if you see me do something and you think there's an important idea, you think it needs to be shared, go ahead and pop in. I won't mind. Okay, so I am going to share my screen as well. Let me do this real quick. Bear with me a moment. Oh, here we go. Okay. Okay. So what relationships are is they're just how multiple tables fit together. Now, a lot of individuals, when I first started working in relationships, I thought it was a way for tables to talk to each other. But actually what I learned is that you want to set up relationships so you can categorize and aggregate and do data analysis on the back end. And relationships are really important for that. So I want to show you, this is just a sample data set. And so, oh, go
Ryan, can
ahead.
you reshare? Sorry to interrupt you. Where you're seeing a black screen.
Oh, okay. Let me reshare. Sorry about
Sorry.
that.
No, sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, you're good. No, that's good. How is this?
Let's see. Still seeing a black screen.
Oh no. Okay, well, let me just I have one more thing I can do. Um, how about now?
Let's see. There we go. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I'm not gonna have my notes up, so I'm doing this on the fly. So so if I forget something. So anyway, here's the layout in Power BI. This is kind of what it looks like. So here, like we said, we have tables. So this is just a sample survey data set. So you can see here's what it typically looks like, right? You have your kind of questions going across. We've all seen this survey ID along the left. And then this is what's called a facts table in Power BI. You also generally have what's called a filter. I call it a filter table. Other people call it dimensions table. That's what you want to filter on the data. And so typically that's things like demographics, GPA. I tend to duplicate the files because I like to filter by question. Okay. Now, it was mentioned earlier that Power BI likes, these are wide. You notice how they're kind of wide, but Power BI really likes the long kind of format, like the previous presenter said. And you can see here you have survey IDs, and then you can see it's organized by question. And then here we have, this is the question value. So imagine a survey has a scale of 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and the advantage of this is that you can aggregate just by this column. I mean, you may be thinking, well, Ryan, if I aggregate by this column, it's going to pull all those questions in. Well, that's why you create filters and relationships, because you can create a relationship with this table and tell it, I only want to look at question 2, right? Because you could keep your files wide like this and create a relationship between them. But the problem is that's by the individual level. If you just wanted to get data by individual level, that works. But if you want to, but we're interested in by question, right? And by categories. So you can put a filter on this and just look at question 2 and just aggregate by that. Further filter, you could, if you want to aggregate by demographic, like first generation or something like that. Okay, so this is the typical kind of data view. So the way I think of it, I'll go to the vision, is when I think of relationships like a house. This is the analogy I use. So if you had a house and each room has outlets and chairs and lamps, I don't know, whatever. The thing is, if you were to aggregate all this, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? Because you can only do it room by room by room. So what you need is a system where you can where you can create a relationship, not only so that they can talk to each other, but so that you can aggregate the data. So I think of relationships as the hallways and kind of the doorways. And that way you can go room to room and you can aggregate. So let's say you wanted to count outlets, right? You could aggregate by all these rooms, or let's say you say, I want to filter by kitchen or office. Because you created relationships, you can just filter by that and just aggregate by kitchen and offices. Okay. So that's how I think of relationships. So I'm going to show you this view. So this is so we have in Power BI, we have a report view. This is where you do the visualizations. We have the kind of table view. This is where you build the tables. And again, you want it, Power BI wants it a long format. This is all coming together. It's all integrated. And so all our presentations. And then here's where you create the relationships. And there's a few ways you can do this. Typically, when you load data into Power BI, it'll create these automatic relationships. It can be a little clunky. It'll read things weirdly. It'll say, like it'll create relationships that it doesn't mean to. So what I typically do is I delete all those and then I create new ones on my own. It doesn't take that long. So there are a few ways you can establish relationships. One, you can click on Manage Relationships, and this tells you all your relationships. We'll go over this one to many in a moment. Or you can just click and drag. Okay, so for instance, here's our long file here. Remember we had our survey values here. So I want to link this to my filter or my dimension table. So what you can do is you can just drag it over. And it's telling you this is the relationship that I think you want. So here, this is our filter file. In our filter file, each person has a row. Very standard, typical thing. Like if you download data from Qualtrics or an Excel or whatever, you're going to see it row by row. That's how we're used to thinking of it. This is the one that we unpivoted. And you could see it's by question. So we could also sort this by ID. So it'd be 111, 222, etc. So what we have is a situation where there's 23 questions. So each ID has 23 rows and each question has 23 rows. So that's many rows, right? But in our filter file, we only have one row per person. And that's where the one to many comes in. So we're telling it we have one here, many here, and then we just create a relationship there, one to many, and we do a single filter. And then you hit save. And then Power BI creates this neat little line right here. And if you want to edit it, you can right click on it and do properties. I like to keep things neat and tidy. You can see you can move things around here. You can kind of do this. So if we revisit this again, remember we put our demographic filter on this. So we can tell Power BI, when you pull data, just pull for this question because that's really what we want to aggregate. Okay. You could also do a many to many. You could do a one to one. There's all kinds of options you can do. I would say that one to many is the most common by far and away with the data you're going to work with. That's the kind of environment you're going to want to be in. So what's the end product of this? Well, what you can get is a visualization. I'm going to move this around like this. I'm going to open these filters. And you can create these filters. And when you put them on here, so you can filter by question and you can easily change it. Well, like this, because you set up those relationships in the beginning. The advantage of this is you can copy and paste. Like I just copied this over, and this is another category, the satisfaction category. And then you can just choose your satisfaction question over here. So by creating these relationships and creating and doing a lot of the work on the back end. So Lee mentioned earlier how if I interpret it right, you like to set up everything in Excel or whatever, make it all clean. I do the same thing. I do as much as I can in Excel because when I work in Power Query, that transform thing, it's easy to break it in my experience. And if I do one thing wrong, it's kind of a hassle to fix it. So I like to have everything in Excel, neat and tidy, ready to go. And then when I put it in Power BI, it's just ready to go. I don't have to do a lot of work in Transform. Has that been I see some nodding heads. That's been your experience as well.
Yeah, I also prefer to do most of it in Excel. I'm very comfortable in Excel, less in query. So if I can do it in Excel, I will do it there first.
Yeah. And Sarah, I don't know if you've ever done this, but like I've done something in or not Tableau, Power BI, and then I broke it. And it was such a hassle to fix, I just started over again. Yeah, I'm seeing shaking head.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll second that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's
I was like,
fragile.
yeah, I can detect this problem, or I can just get some coffee, put on some music, and just start over. And so, but now I have a Word document with careful notes over the years, so that doesn't happen as much. But when I was new, the first year, all the time that happened. And so so that's how I view relationships. Again, you think about the table, that one to many thing. And I really like this idea of, if we go back to this table, you can just apply a filter here. I'm going to show you what this looks like. Sort ascending. See how each ID, and these are all the questions, and here's their answer to the survey. So, but I'm not interested in by ID. I don't care about that. Now you may say, but you're interested by a student status like race or first generation. That's why you have that demo file, the dimension file we called it over here. That's where all that stuff lives. And I already created relationships so you can tell Power BI to do that. Okay. So this really does a good job aggregating by question. And to me, that's the power in relationships and that kind of long format. Um, does anyone else have anything to add? Did I describe that accurately? Okay. Okay. I think any questions about relationships? Okay. I think my part is over.
Okay, yeah,
Oh,
I think it's my turn to chime in.
yeah.
Before I do, I did see that there was one question
Mhm.
in the chat. I don't know if it got addressed. It looks like actually, I think it did get addressed. It was about unpivoting the data. But if that person didn't have their question answered, just chime back in and let us know. But the next one was about what types of charts and visuals are available. And really anything you could imagine you can probably do in Power BI. I'm also going to just go ahead and drop a link. Power BI through Microsoft has a lot of helpful documentation that you can use to kind of educate yourself. And so since they are kind of just like you can click and play with them, I just dropped a link in the chat that has all of the different visualizations that you can use. I'm aware that there are also like add-on ones that you can like somehow upload from like the Power BI store and stuff like that. I've never played with that, but there is some extra stuff you can do there. So I'll just toss that in there, and then if we want to move on to, I think Ryan for doing interactive dashboards.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen real quick again. Okay. That's not it. So to import, I got to be honest, I don't import a lot of third-party visuals. Just over the years, I've worked for several reasons. I'll show you how to do it. It's pretty simple. Just because Power BI has gotten better at creating visuals, and when you import the data and model it, it works within the format that you set up. When you import a third-party visual, it may have different assumptions about how you model the data, how you set it up. And that, to me, that can be a little confusing, but it's really easy to do. Here's your visuals over here, and you can just, I'm sure you've all done this. You can just click on it, and then, so if you want to import, there's this little kind of get more visuals here. And it'll give you an option of what you want to look at, and you can kind of filter, you can do maps or narratives. There's all kinds of things here. And so I'm just going to click on one comparison, and then you can kind of click these, but you can see they look very specific, and you got to set up the data in a certain way for a lot of these. So over time, I've gotten better, or my skills have increased, like a lot of us who work with Power BI, at just creating visualizations on my own, and that's easier to do. But I'll show you another reason why I don't. When you click on it, Well, it's loading data. Well, this one doesn't have pricing. Sometimes you'll see a thing up here and it says pricing and it'll say like $40 a month. And I'm like, I'm not spending $40 a month for a bar chart that I can do in Power BI that comes with it. And so that's another reason why I don't use, does anyone else on the panel use third-party visualizations?
I don't, and I just dropped in there. Our campus is actually having us move away from them as well due to potential security concerns and data privacy stuff. So, I don't know if that's an overreaction on our part, but it's nice to know.
Yeah. But anyone else have anything to add? Okay. So anyway, so I don't work with them, but it is an option there. Um, and I think I was going to talk about dashboards a little bit. And so what you can do, I don't, honestly, I create a lot of personally, I create a lot of things in reports. So you can do Power BI in a report like on your desktop and then upload it to a service, or you can work within the service, which the service is the website. That's how I look at it, just keep it simple. And so you can create dashboards. I don't know what the advantage of dashboard is. You can pull in figures from um, different reports and different visualizations. So I'll kind of show you how easy it is. So this is just, here's a report that's in Power BI service. I'll click on it. And then what you do is you just hit pin, you hover over the visual, the first one that you want on there, and hit pin visual. And it'll say, do you want to add it to an existing or a new? Well, we'll create a new one. I'll just call it test. I'll just go to the dashboard. And there's your dashboard. And what you can do is you can go things here. You can add it. You can add a tile and add visuals from other kind of reports and visualizations. Whoops, it just took me back to that. That's pretty much it. The best way to learn it is to play around with it. Again, I like to set everything up in the report and upload it like a dashboard. So let's say if I want to create a retention dashboard with Nessie data, I'll add the retention data into the report and then upload it and create the dashboard there. Other individuals like to bring in data from different places. Our EDA office, I wouldn't, they do that with some of it, but for my assessment work, it's a little bit more specific. I prefer to do it that way. I don't know if anyone has any other insights on dashboards. Do a lot of you use them in assessment? Yeah.
Yeah, I use these primarily for illustrating assessment data. I'm not really pinning them from other dashboards like that. It's coming from like my Excel files of assessment data and then using that to build. And then I had our central IT office. I don't think I had like permission to build an app, which was something new to me, that you can have this app that you can share with other people and then you set up permissions and all that kind of stuff. So we have a dashboard for every program with their assessment data, and then we have it limited to just the program directors can see their own, and then administration can see everybody's. And so that was helpful for assessment purposes.
Yeah, that's the environment I work in is the apps, and that's how our data analytics office likes to have it set up. But I don't have permission to create it. Yeah.
Yeah, me either. I had to ask them to make one. I don't know where that line is, but yeah, I had the same experience.
The person I ask, I'm always bothering, can you create another app for me? Can you create another? And then I don't have permission to refresh it. So I'm constantly bothering them to refresh it when I upload a new report. But
Maybe if you bother them enough, they'll just give you permission and
yeah,
let you do it yourself.
yeah, I like that. I like that strategy. Okay. Any other questions about any of that before we move on? I'm seeing some chat. I am not connecting LMS data. Someone said they've been piloting with that.
Mhm.
Actually, we did gen ed through Canvas. We did our artifact analysis with rubrics, and then but I didn't create it. Our data analytics office created a neat dashboard of LMS data. But
I was going to ask real quick before we move into sharing and collaboration. Somebody had asked earlier if, and this could be for any of y'all, if y'all could speak more about your decision to work within a database or within Power BI as opposed to Excel.
I can maybe chime in here. I think if by database, I guess what people mean when they say database varies. So I hope I understand what the person who asks question means by database. Hopefully on the same page. So if we're talking about something like an institutional database, or like where we have or Canvas, right? Canvas has, we can think of it as a large database, or we can think of Microsoft Fabric or Snowflake as a database. So I think at certain point, Excel, when it comes to the amount of data that you're working with, will just break. It will just not comply anymore. I don't know how many of you had the privilege of breaking Excel because you tried to put too much data in it. So I think it happened to me once in my whole life. And versus databases don't suffer from that problem generally. So you can work with very large amount of data without worrying too much if you're going to break it. I guess that's my little comment on that. And I also wanted to maybe, while I'm speaking, quickly elaborate on the question about connecting Canvas to Power BI. At Florida State University, we've played with it over years, over multiple different years, and tried different approaches. The one that worked for us at the end of the day is connecting our Canvas data to Snowflake database, and then Snowflake database, well, data lake, I guess, data lake. That's the name, the cool name, Snowflake data lake. And that connecting that to Power BI. So this is the connection that we create. It's not direct Snowflake to Power BI, but there is kind of this intermediary step there. And I'm going to let Caitlyn speak about that when she's covering the sharing and collaboration piece as well.
Which we can jump into now, unless there were any other questions people wanted to address first.
I'll respond to that last question too. I would say pick the tool that works and that you're familiar with. If you are most familiar with Excel, then Excel is probably your tool. I am pretty familiar with Access, and so that's why a whole lot of my stuff goes into Access. And Access kind of gives me a lot of control about that file is here. I know where it is. It's sitting right here on this shared drive that we have. And how you can transform that data within that tool. Like if you're an Excel guru, great. If you're an Access guru, great. If you're some other system guru, great. Use that thing. That seems to be the best rule that I
I will add a little bit, and then I do have one other follow-up question. So sorry, Caitlin. The other thing too, I will say, kind of going back to the first point about breaking Excel, it is the most unpleasant task in the world to open an Excel that takes 10 minutes to open. I've had to do that in a previous job. We ran the entire department off of Excel. So at some point, I think it does become a bit more unmanageable. So if there's a way to speed it up and things like that, it's helpful. I did have a question too in the chat about if y'all have any guidance about how to set up data architecture for building reports. So the person asked, for example, do you store the raw data in hierarchical data structures like embedded folders or in another structure? And how do you balance the need to move from development to validation to production to archiving? It seems complicated to set up a good data organization and process so things don't become a hot mess. So kind of two questions there. So if you have any thoughts about storing data and then also balancing the need of like moving the data through from development to archive.
Well, I'll just say that's what our data analytics team is for. A lot of my job is trying to get individuals to use data, to focus on judgment. And so I'm just speaking for me, I feel like that's their job. That's my campus, though. So
I second that as well. On our campus, this kind of work is usually done by our IT and data science team.
Yeah, same here. I don't have any experience with it. Yeah, I don't have any advice to give for that one. I'm sorry.
Within my purview, I'm dealing with like really small sets of data, like a course rubric. I know the data, it's in the spreadsheet, and that's all that I need. I don't need a large data architecture to manage it. So
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. Caitlin, I'll let you take it away now.
Awesome. Right, I am going to share my screen. Hopefully everybody is seeing the Power BI license comparison. Yes. So before we jumped into the specific options, I'm going to kill my camera in case my internet gets a little upset with me. I did want to quickly touch on the different Power BI license types, since these will determine what options we're about to discuss will actually be available to you. So everybody automatically has a free Power BI license, which allows you to publish reports to a My Workspace or a private space just visible just to you. And publishing basically means clicking the publish icon in the ribbon of the desktop application and choosing the workspace that you want to send the report to. So free accounts, you'll just see one option, My Workspace, and workspaces are opened in the browser. These are the service, and it's where most of the sharing and security options that we're about to look at are actually managed. But there are very limited sharing capabilities with the free account. In fact, most of what we're about to cover is not available at that level. But if you're just starting out learning the basics, it's a good place to begin. Whereas a pro license will allow you to publish to shared workspaces where other users with a pro license in your organization can access and interact with those reports. And there actually is a 60-day free trial of the pro license if you're interested in looking into some of those features. Above that is a premium per user license, which includes everything in Pro, plus some extra stuff in addition to the security and sharing capabilities that are slightly more enhanced. And a premium capacity, on the other hand, is organization-wide. So reports published to a premium workspace can be viewed by anyone internal to your organization, regardless of whether or not they have a specific license or account. So I think the best way to go through all of these different questions related to sharing and collaboration options is to kind of walk through them as a part of a sharing workflow, which should also just help guide the decision that has to be made about what is the most appropriate approach to sharing a report for a specific report that you're working on. So is this going to be for an internal or an external audience? And if this is an external stakeholder that you're looking to share the report with, that usually means that the report is going to live on a website somewhere and be publicly accessible. And this is an option available with a pro or a premium license, or again, in the premium capacity if your organization has it. And the process will start in the same way, kind of for all of the options we're about to talk about, which is publishing the report from your desktop app to a shared workspace. And are you seeing the workspace now on the screen? Yes, okay, awesome. So from the workspace, you'll see a view of the report. This is just an example. And in the file dropdown, you'll see an option to embed the report. So if your organization allows it, you may need to work with your IT team to enable this permission. You do have the ability to publish to web directly, which will allow anybody without any particular license to view a report that you've embedded within a website. Or you can embed it with the additional level of security, which is that individuals need to sign in with their credentials for your specific organization to be able to view the report. So an example of what it might look like if you were to embed a report directly on a web page. Here's the same report we were just looking at, but we can interact with it. We can change the different tabs. We can use the different filters without needing to have any sort of Power BI account ourselves. So this would be the most public way to share a report. However, in most cases, the audience is going to be more internal to your university. And in these cases, you also have to think a little bit about, am I going to be collaborating with someone on the building and designing of this report? Or am I looking to share the final product with maybe minimal editing features associated with it? And so the only time it really makes sense to share the PBIX file itself, the one that you have to open in a desktop application, is if you're working collaboratively with someone in your office, typically on building or designing the report, in which case it makes sense to save it to a shared local drive. You can also email them directly if need be. But this will require the other individual, again, to have access to a license to open that file. But in most cases, the goal is to share the finished report, right, with just maybe minor editing capabilities at best. And that's much easier to do through the browser, the Power BI service. And the first step, again, is always to publish it to a shared workspace. So I'm going to go back here. So there's a lot of other options available. The most kind of obvious one is just share here, which will bring up a pop-up menu where you can create a link at various different levels of access. So you can allow anyone in your organization with this link that you're about to create to view the report. They'll be prompted to sign in with their credentials before it loads. You can restrict access to people who already have access, which means they've been granted permissions to the workspace the report was published to, or they've already been granted direct access to the report, which we'll touch on. Or the most secure way to go about it is to grant access to just specific people for this link. And you can also make it so that they don't have the ability to share it with anybody else or build content off of that. It's truly just a read-only access. And you can type in the email addresses of the people that you want to share this with, generate the link, email it to them directly, send it via Teams, or also a link they can embed in a PowerPoint. So once you've closed out of that, there's also multiple options for exporting the content of the report versus the report itself. So if you export to Excel, it'll open like a pivot table template. It's not necessarily just like a raw data dump. You can also export the report to a PowerPoint slide, either embed it live with the ability to interact with it, say during a presentation, or just like a static image as well. And the final option that you'll see here is to essentially take a PDF snapshot of all of the pages of your report with the option to keep them at the filtered values you've already set them at. So for example, we have some individuals who they are kind of the coordinator for the department. They're the one who has access to the report with the data for all of the individual courses. But they don't want every individual instructor to see all of each other's data. They preferred to just be the one to filter and send these PDF snapshots to their instructors as one approach. If you go into the Manage Permissions area, you'll be able to see a more detailed view about who already has access to your report. So this report is just a sample one. There isn't much already being defined back here. But the first option is exactly what we just saw. We can create a link through this view as well, or we can give someone direct access to a report. And so direct access is typically best for ongoing users who are going to be able to access this kind of on a future basis versus just a temporary basis. And it also allows for a more audible like access list and activity logs, whereas links may be better for just like short-term or temporary access. But both allow you to define view or edit permissions and will require the end user to have a pro license at least, or be in a premium workspace. And so if you do generate a link or embed the report somewhere and an individual tries to access it who doesn't have permissions granted, they will receive a pop-up that allows them to request access. So you do have the ability to approve or decline access requests. When you create shared views, so here when I generated that PowerPoint slide, it will also log them here so you can keep track of all of those different instances where it's being shared. And this one connects kind of to what was just being discussed about building dashboards off of existing reports or data sets. Should somebody inherit access to a report because they were granted access to what it was built on, you'll also be able to see that here. So it gives you a bit more of a clean view of who has direct access versus who inherited access. Quickly go back. So we talked about giving direct access, creating a link. You can also give someone access to the workspace that a report lives in, which would typically make sense if they're within your office, because then they can see all of the reports that have been published to that workspace. And in addition to embedding within a website or a PowerPoint slide, you can also embed into something like a Teams channel. So if you create a Microsoft team, you can control access at the level of the team. Perhaps also if it's a private channel to create a controlled access list there, as well as then securing who has access to the report itself. So here's an example of a team site with a private channel, and the report lives in this team site as one way the end user can access it. I'm going to go through this last part really quickly since I know we're running low on time. But if you have, say, a single report that you want to be able to send to multiple different users, but have them only see subsets of the data set behind the scenes, you can use something called row level security. So within the desktop application, you can see this manage roles option. And all of the tables that you've worked with to build the report will appear here. And I can create a role. So for example, this is my accounting department group. And I want to say they can only see data for these specific courses. Finance can only see data for these specific courses. So I can define this limitation here. And also kind of view what that might look like if that were that individual. So kind of see that the data behind the scenes changes. And when I've published this to my workspace, I will have the option, here we go, to assign users to these roles. So this doesn't automatically give them access to the report, but it means when we grant them access to the report in some way, shape, or form, Power BI knows that they should only see this filtered view of the data. Great. I think that was it for my section.
Yeah, I wanted to very quickly add that for our very large academic unit, like our entire College of Business, for example, because there are some departments and some, chairs or faculty members that don't necessarily need to see other departments and other faculties' student learning outcomes data. So this is a great way to just build one large report and then control access, kind of, like the chair of this department sees everything for accounting, but this particular instructor only sees this course within the accounting. So it's one of the ways to keep it a little bit more manageable as far as who can see what.
Ryan, we've got like 2 questions that you've got left. If you want to take 2 minutes and either tackle.
Sure. I can do it in less than, I can do it quickly than that. So if you
Perfect.
want to look at metrics, just go to YouTube, ask ChatGPT. It'll show you how to do it. The one thing is, if you look at a report metric in the workspace, it'll only give you that metric within that context. And so you'll look at it and be like, well, I only had one viewer and that was me. And so you definitely want to think about the context when you look at metrics, but it'll show you who looked at it, what dates, it'll give you nice visualizations. Tableau and Power BI, maybe there might be a lot of people disagree. It's the same thing. If you look at the back end, the tables and the relationships and the modeling, It's pretty much exactly the same thing. So if you think about a phone, we all have a phone that looks like this, right? For the most part. That's Tableau and Power BI. But when you get into the apps and you start working with the apps and you customize it for how you want to do it, that's the big difference. That's the kind of analogy I use. And so it's an easy, I learned all this stuff on Tableau and it was an easy transition to Power BI for me. It's just they have these little nuances and these different ways of doing visualizations that are different. That's the 30-second comparison. So but you can easily, if you learn one, you can easily transfer your knowledge to the other. That was my experience, at least.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I believe we got all questions answered with our last little bit remaining. Any other questions or anything else you have for our panelists? All right. Well, thank you all so much for providing your expertise. We will share this recording through the YouTube channel. And Stephanie and I will be able to give, or you can access that through the YouTube channel. I think Stephanie will be the one that'll upload it. But please let us know if you have any questions, and then please complete the feedback form if y'all have any thoughts or anything else that you'd like to see covered in the future. But we really appreciate y'all's time, and then also say thank you to our presenters again for giving their knowledge and expertise. We really appreciate it. But thanks y'all. Y'all have a great rest of your day.